It's a super quiet day when it comes to Warriors news. No big deal. Mike Dunleavy Jr. is the new GM. Assistant coach Jama Mahlalela is out. He's leaving for who knows why. Draymond Green's not going to opt into his player option. No big deal. This is a very quiet Friday, and Kylen Mills will try to make things interesting next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, including Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and probably more at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. It's a busy day today, Kylen. I was being facetious in that cold open. The reality is, in the last 8 hours, I don't know, there's a lot going on with the Golden State Warriors. I guess we start with Mike Dunleavy Jr. Do we start with Draymond Green? I don't know what we start with. Kylen, great to see you. I'll let you decide. What should we go with first? Take it away. Hi.
Good to see you as well, Cyrus. I love the way you say guaranteed. I can't even do it the way you do it.
I steal it. That's from Charles Barkley. I stole that from Barkley. I can't claim, but I'm emulating him. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, well, you knocked it out of the park. In terms of starting today, we have got to start by talking about Draymond Green's future with the Warriors, because this report that has supposedly come from Mark Spears on NBA Today that Draymond Green is expected to opt out of his contract. The Warriors apparently still trying to bring him back. That's big news. Now, I know you mentioned, Cyrus, that you're not surprised by this. I'm a little bit surprised. Because I just don't know that I see Draymond Green getting the same money that he would have gotten with the Warriors in his last season. I also am someone who have said that, yes, Draymond Green is a great player, one of the best defenders in the NBA. I think he's a future Hall of Famer, but he is on the twilight of his career. You're talking about picking up an older player who doesn't bring much at all offensively and who may not be the same asset to another team that doesn't run the same system as the Warriors. Like, that's the way I look at it. And a big part of Draymond Green's value to this organization is the way that he's able to run the floor with Steph Curry and work so well in conjunction with Steph. So is he valuable to another organization? Yes. Would he get more money than he would get with the Warriors? I guess that's a question that, I don't know, surprises me.
And this is so far not, I mean, there's hardly anything on Twitter or social media about this. Yeah. Mark Spears, I'm guessing, I don't even know for certain, but I'm guessing Mark Spears announced this on ESPN's NBA Today show. I don't even know if that's the right title. I'm sorry. But my guess is he's a contributor for ESPN. He's a regular guest on that show. And he reportedly said on the show that Draymond Green is going to opt out, but the Warriors are in the process of trying to sign him to a new deal. It doesn't surprise me. I've been saying for months that it would shock me if he opted into the final year, simply because you're right. He is on the tail end of his career. Offensively, he doesn't bring much unless he's in the right system. The wrong system makes him borderline irrelevant offensively outside of maybe sort of a point guard type role. But there are just so many teams out there that are a Draymond Green away from potentially winning a world championship, or at least they see themselves in that position. I think I believe on that same show where Mark Spears said this, Kendrick Perkins was making the argument that the Phoenix Suns would be a perfect team for Draymond Green to come to, simply because they could just be a Draymond Green away from being world championship favorites next year. Now that could be a whole other discussion, but the point is, a lot of teams see him as being the difference. And when you're that close to a world championship and you feel like you're just one piece away, you're going to do what it takes. Draymond Green is also represented by Clutch Sports. So I never envisioned for a second him taking less money than what he could make. AC writes when the opt-out deadline is. I believe it's the end of June. I think it's June 29th. Don't quote me on that, but it's around that date. I believe, though, it's June 29th is when Draymond Green can be an unrestricted free agent. But again, the Warriors are reportedly working on an extension to keep him with the Warriors. But it's crazy. I mean, the offseason's coming. I guess, Kylen, let me ask you this. Do you think he's going to stay? I mean, like, because Mark Spears' ankle is interesting. Mark Spears clearly has a closer connection to Draymond than most media members, because Mark Spears was also the same individual who, after the Warriors lost Game 6 to the Lakers, tweeted out that Draymond Green, if Bob Myers leaves, will be questioning his future with the Warriors. And then I saw something else. I think it was like on an Instagram story where he added that if Myers leaves, Draymond leaves. Now, granted, this was right after Game 6. Who knows if his attitude's changed, but he was very close to Bob Myers. Draymond Green is also incredibly astute as a basketball, savant, aficionado. He knows the game. His basketball IQ is high. It's borderline unparalleled. I'm guessing he's seeing the writing on the wall with this Warriors team. You know, we got to talk about Jama Mahlalela in a second here, because he announced yesterday that he's leaving for a similar position with the Raptors. That's weird. Okay, that does not pass the smell test. So I guess my question to you, Kylen, is do you think he stays or is he gone? What do you think, just from initial impressions?
I don't know. So, I mean, I actually was just looking at my phone because I was trying to read the tea leaves a little bit and find and track down a video or the exact phrasing, because I think that the wording that Mark Spears used is an important piece of this. He said, quote, according to 95.7 The Game, which did report that he said it on NBA Today, which is something that you brought up, that he said that the Warriors expect Draymond Green to opt out of his contract, but they are doing everything in their power to bring him back. So to me, it sounds far from guaranteed that there would be a long-term extension coming. That like specific verbiage sounds to me that it's more likely that he's leaving than he's coming back. I mean, that's my spin on it, and that's my take on it. If they're doing everything in their power to bring him back, makes it sound like he's leaving and they're trying to prevent that from happening. At least, like I said, that's just my personal spin on the words. I mean, I don't know. At this point, I don't know, because like I said, I feel like for Draymond to make money, staying with the Warriors organization makes the most sense, in my personal opinion. You just mentioned, you know, in terms of the offensive system he'd be going to, he could be useless depending on the type of offense that a team would be running that he would walk into. Like, I don't know. He just fits so well with what the Warriors do. He fits so well with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. They can use him in so many different ways. Steve Kerr is willing to put up with Draymond Green's antics, which I think is something else that you do have to point out in terms of Draymond Green being a hothead, dealing with suspensions every year. You got the drama that happened during the NBA playoffs with the stomp and Domantas Sabonis. I mean, you also have to talk about an organization and a coach who feels comfortable dealing with that and how to handle Draymond Green. I'm just saying, like, everything works with the Warriors. Like, they know how to deal with Draymond. They're, okay with some of the other things that come along with his fieriness and his passion, because he's won championships here and he's proven himself. And, he has that level of trust with his teammates, although, obviously the note the season started on this season wasn't great. But still, in the big picture, he has those relationships within the Warriors organization. If you walk away and you don't have those relationships and you're talking about, just a player who brings that fire and passion, but also can get into the mix in terms of, some drama, how would an opposing or a different coach or front office handle that type of thing? Because I don't know what you think about this, Cyrus, but I do think the Warriors give Draymond some leeway because they know it's Draymond. Yeah. You know what I mean? Versus someone else wouldn't handle it the same way.
I know, obviously. Fortunately, we have a new correspondent here at Locked On Warriors. Ranger 49 is now an official employee. I'm kidding, but he's writing in the chat that 95.7 played audio, and at least from the tone of Mark Spears, it doesn't sound like this is anything out of the norm, and it might not be. Again, like literally the reports right after Game 6 that were coming out was that Draymond wants to stay and that his representation in the Warriors were working on a new deal, an extension. So let's hope for the sake of the Warriors being championship contenders that he stays, because I think it's safe to say that if he decides to leave, their dynasty is over. Like we're officially in like a transition mode with this Golden State Warriors team. potential rebuild. So hopefully Draymond Green stays, in my humble opinion. But that's crazy news. So, and look, if he's going to get paid, he's going to get paid. And it wouldn't surprise me again if he signed some sort of extension that was like a new deal that was like a 3-year, $80 million, 3-year, anywhere from 60 to 90. I guess it could be somewhere in that range in terms of his pay. But the offseason's starting. There's no doubt about that. We got to talk about Mike Dunleavy Jr., and obviously this Draymond Green news. The Jama Mahlalela news is big. Adrian Wojnarowski reported yesterday that he has left the Warriors for a identical assistant coaching position with the Toronto Raptors. And that's obviously something we got to discuss. I mean, that's a big news story. It's very underrated, but it's big, and I'll explain why. And we have a lot to talk about. First, I got to give some love to one of our sponsors today. We got breaks at both the 10 and 20. And our first sponsor is Birddogs. This is clothing that is comfortable and makes you look good. Birddogs, for example, has their stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you that truly sculpted look. It's an added bonus if you're proud of your legs, gentlemen. This is clothes for men, and they fit better than regular shorts. I have a couple myself. I love them. They are incredibly comfortable. And again, it's about comfort yet looking damn good, being comfortable. And look, show yourself wearing Birddogs on camera. Talk about and show off yourself. Go out there, flaunt your Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. I got one of those too, and I love it. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnba for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Locked On's NBA mock draft special is here. Kylen, you spent hours hosting these segments. Bravo. I watched some of them. It's bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And again, Kylen hosted all of those segments. You killed it. Bravo. We went with Jalen Hood-Schifino with the 19th pick for Locked On Warriors. Although I don't think that's likely. I think he's going to get picked much earlier than that. What are your thoughts on Mike Dunleavy Jr., Kylen? By the way, people can follow you on social media platforms at Kylen Mills. Mike Dunleavy Jr. has been promoted. One of the first things I saw, which made me absolutely laugh, is a quote from Mike Dunleavy Jr. back in, I believe, 2005. There's this hilarious Twitter account, which I don't know if they're still active or not. I used to see them posting a lot of stuff. And the Twitter account is called This Day in Suck. And it's all about moments in Warriors history that are just utterly laughable in terms of how pathetic it was. And one of the tweets that's making the rounds right now, this was posted, I think, like 5 years ago, but it was Mike Dunleavy being quoted back in December 28th, 2005, where he was saying, quote, "I'm really tired of the negativity around here. We're trying our best. We play hard. If they're going to come out as fans, they shouldn't be negative." Unquote. Mike Dunleavy Jr., the former number 3 pick for the Golden State Warriors, making those complaints about a couple years after he was drafted during the dark, dark days of the Warriors. He is now the GM. It doesn't excite me, but I have no idea how he is when it comes to personnel. We're about to find out. Kylen, what are your thoughts on Mike Dunleavy Jr. as the new GM of the Golden State Warriors?
I think, to be fair, that people should give Mike Dunleavy Jr. a chance. I mean, at least this is someone who has basketball experience. I know a lot of people have commented they were concerned or thought that possibly Kirk Lacob, Joe Lacob's son, could be elevated to GM, and that a lot of people had issues with that because they felt like, that he was someone who wasn't qualified. To me, Mike Dunleavy Jr. has the basketball experience. He's been working under Bob Myers for long enough that he should have learned some of the tricks of the trade. And, at the end of the day, he was a professional player. Whether he lived up to expectations of the number 3 pick or not, he knows the insides and outs of the game. So I think that he deserves a shot in that regard. On the other hand, though, I would have liked to see the Warriors bring in some fresh blood. And I know that's something that we both have talked about, a fresh set of eyes. And here's another reason why I say this. I mean, some of my concerns are that I think you need a fresh set of eyes and someone who could potentially stand up to Joe Lacob and, really establish themselves and try to draw that line in terms of, hey, here's where I'm going to make these basketball decisions rather than let Joe Lacob run the show, which is something that we've talked about here on the podcast, that there are increasing clues that Joe Lacob is getting very, very involved in the basketball decision-making. How much should he be involved is the next question. And I just wouldn't mind having some fresh ideas in the Warriors organization. So I think there's a little bit of both in terms of Dunleavy. I know a lot of people had issues with him as a player. I understand he didn't live up to that top draft pick that people were expecting, and he represents a lot to fans in terms of just kind of the darkness of that time in Warriors history. I think that he still deserves a chance as an individual. However, at the same time, I wish they would have gone out and looked for the best candidate available. I don't know. I still wish there would have been more of a search.
Yeah.
And then my question mark is just, is Joe Lacob going to be really running the show? Is this going to be Dunleavy is the GM by title, but Joe Lacob is making the basketball decisions? That's my question.
Well, I read the Adrian Wojnarowski. I read a couple stories this morning when all this stuff was coming down. One was Adrian Wojnarowski's full story on Mike Dunleavy Jr. Being elevated to GM. Interesting nuggets from that piece was that when it comes to bigger decisions, that's where Kirk Lacob is also involved. Again, we don't know what his new title is. I've been saying my guess is he'll be the president of basketball operations with Dunleavy taking GM. And then the story also mentioned that Joe Lacob still is the final shot caller. It wasn't in those words exactly, but it did mention reference in the story that Joe will be involved and that he does still give the final approval. And then Conor Letourneau, our friend who does a phenomenal job covering the Golden State Warriors, he wrote a great piece about Dunleavy today. A couple things I didn't know until I read the story. One is I didn't know that Bob Myers was Dunleavy's agent, and that's how they knew each other. That's how Dunleavy Jr. basically got in and got that assistant GM job. He did get that job after Brent Barry turned it down. That was Myers' original pick. But so Dunleavy got in because Myers was his representation. And then I like this move in this regard. Dunleavy does have a good relationship with Draymond Green. Conor Letourneau also revealed that in his piece. Mike Dunleavy Jr. has a good relationship with Klay Thompson. To navigate those waters, if you brought in an outsider right now, I don't know how easily they could have done that. Whereas with Dunleavy, you have the continuity, you have stability, and it probably makes things easier when it comes to renegotiating these deals. You can keep Draymond Green, so you can keep Klay Thompson if you want him for a longer term deal. So I don't hate it, And again, I'm not going to judge him at all. It's just a lot of Warriors fans. I mean, that 2003, I think that was the year he got drafted. That was right in the middle of pure darkness. That was, I think they'd gone 10 years without making the playoffs or somewhere like that. And then, you get the number 3 pick, you're excited for just a brief moment. And then Dunleavy Jr. is who they select. I remember even at that time when the Warriors announced that pick, no one was excited about it. And then 2 years in, we were less excited about it. And so, there's a trauma there as a Warriors fan. So when you see Dunleavy Jr., you do unfortunately think back to those days. But with that said, I personally am not going to judge him. We need to see the body of work. Best of luck. Right. I mean, I hope he does well. Before we move on from Dunleavy, any final thoughts from you on Dunleavy Jr. as the new GM?
No, I mean, like I said, I don't have a huge problem with it either. I hope that, he learned something working under Bob Myers. Bob Myers, helped build this organization to the championship organization that it is. Mike Dunleavy Jr. has the basketball experience. And, I think that it'll be interesting to see just kind of what his style is, what his take is. As much as he may have learned from Bob Myers, I'm sure he has his own thoughts and his own vision. So, I mean, I think we'll find out a lot with this draft, determining which direction the Warriors organization is going. What is Mike Dunleavy's style? I'll be very, very curious for when we hear from him on the podium, because he is someone who has not been front facing in terms of with the media from the Warriors organization. So that's another thing. You don't really know his style in terms of, how he's going to handle addressing public concerns, addressing the media, those types of things that Bob Myers had to deal with when personnel decisions were made. So it's a new era for sure. And it'll be interesting to see surrounding the draft, just exactly what we hear from Dunleavy, what the decision is for the Warriors. And I know we talked about it at length, a lot of different directions that we can go, or at least the Warriors can go in terms of, there's rumors now about them trading up. Do they pick someone with the 19th pick? Do they potentially trade away the pick? Do they trade up, draft someone higher, and then trade that individual away and package them up? There's just a lot of different things that could happen. So it'll be interesting to see. And a couple people are commenting, no outside GM means that it's a rebuild. A couple of comments, AC Rowe Brown saying that Dunleavy signals a rebuild in the Warriors organization. I think that's an interesting take. I don't know what you think about that, Cy.
No, I don't think that means that at all. I don't know why you would interpret that as a rebuild. I don't agree with Ty. I don't know if Ty Hall, what he writes, each time the Warriors have transitioned from someone in office, they've been fine. We haven't seen a transition over 10 years, Ty. So this is really fresh territory here. And then someone named Mindspringers wrote, I think, the most important question. Where was that? Here we go, right here. And Kylen, you have to answer. I would love your opinion. Who has the better hair, Bob Myers or Mike Dunleavy Jr.? I'm going to go with Bob Myers. He has an incredible coif. What's your opinion on that?
I think Myers currently, for sure. He does have a good head of hair. He does have a good head of hair. I'm trying to look though, because Dunleavy because he had good hair back when he was a player. Like, he had a pretty good, solid.
Yeah, they both have good hair. They both have good hair.
Yeah. So honestly, they both have good hair. So we'll just leave it at that. I give them both B+, A- in terms of male hair. So
I envy both
good
of them.
Good hair in the Warriors organization. We'll take it.
When we come back, we got to talk about Jama Mahlalela leaving because that does bear some significance. So we'll talk about that to wrap this show up. Got to give some love to another one of our sponsors, and that's Gametime. And they're all about tickets and getting tickets easily, getting tickets cheap. And look, one of the perks of using the Gametime app is you don't have to plan months or even weeks in advance for the event you want to go to, whether it's a sporting event, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is you need tickets for. Gametime is there for you, even if you have to buy those tickets last minute. And one of the best parts about Gametime, besides the fact that they're giving you $20 if you use our promo code I'm going to mention in a moment for your first time purchase, is that they offer a low price guarantee. Meaning, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less from another dealer, Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the price difference. That is literally a low price guarantee. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, I'm going to be recording a show at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, which is for me insanely early, with Rafael Barlow of the NBA Big Draft Board. I want to get his insights on Ausar Thompson, who I revealed on yesterday's show is reportedly the twin that the Warriors are interested in. Sam Ferris joined me yesterday and did a great, was incredible in terms of providing insights and knowledge on Ausar. I'm actually excited. If the Warriors do go this Ausar Thompson route, I don't hate it. The more I've read about him, I know I'm giving Connell Letourneau a lot of love on today's show, but just to add to that, he wrote a terrific profile piece on the Thompson twins. And when you read that, you're going to come away with it a lot more impressed about these two men. And if Ausar becomes their pick, I don't hate it. I love Jonathan Kuminga. I don't want him to go, but at the same time, look, if he's going to be just jerked around with his minutes like this on the Warriors, he might as well go somewhere where he can play considerable minutes. And if he's not going to be used by the Warriors, I'd rather them having a player that they will actually use, so we don't have this drama anymore. But regardless, yeah. So Raphael.
So can I ask a question? Can I ask a question about that? So if Steve Kerr won't play Jonathan Kuminga and he wouldn't play Moses Moody during the regular season, why would he suddenly play Ausar Thompson? Like, I don't understand why you would then bring in a rookie who suddenly Steve Kerr would play. Like, what would the difference be compared to the young players he hasn't played in the past? You know,
my understanding is that Ausar. Look, from everything I've read and heard about him, he fits what the Warriors does. He's phenomenal in terms of off-ball movement, which, as we all know, if you follow the Warriors, that's their entire offense is predicated on off-the-ball movement to find the best opportunities to score. He's phenomenal at that. He's terrific at defense. He's terrific at rebounding. But I think the most important variable of Ausar Thompson is he reportedly is an individual who will know his role, who will not command minutes. In all honesty, like the more I learn about this Kuminga thing, Kylen, and I would love your thoughts on this. I don't understand why they drafted him in the first place. Like, you knew Jonathan Kuminga is someone who has in his entire young life been a star wherever he went. He was the focal point of the offense. He had the ball in his hands. He was the star of the show. So when you drafted him, why would you think that he would just accept a lesser role as someone who just might not play one day, might play 30 minutes the next day? That's the part I don't get, is why do you draft a player like Jonathan Kuminga if you don't plan on making him an integral part of your team right away? So what I'm seeing here is, and please jump in. I feel like I'm talking a lot here. I'm sorry, Kylen. But what I'm seeing here is Ausar would basically fit the Warriors a lot better than Jonathan Kuminga. Might not be a better player, but at least he would play and he would be, I guess, subservient. I suppose that's what it comes down to, is if you're going to play on the Warriors and you're not part of the core three, you need to have this level of subservience. Whether or not you agree with that, I don't. That's how they roll. Your thoughts? That's my feeling on it.
I mean, it's interesting to me, though, you know, in terms of playing time, like Jonathan Kuminga, people bring up the attitude and all those things. Like, Moses Moody didn't have an attitude. Moses Moody didn't do anything, you know,
I have an answer
adverse.
To that, and I have an answer to that. And Kyle, like Kristen Peak was on here last week or 2 weeks ago, and she brought up a great point. Moses Moody has, through his entire career, been comfortable as a second option. Whether it was with AAU, I think he played with John Morant. And I forgot the names she brought up, but he's always been he's been in these positions in his career, whether it was AAU or even at Arkansas, where he wasn't always the focal point, and he was comfortable being like a second, third option. So I feel like because of that, he's more accepting of his role as someone who may not be the star of the show, whereas Kuminga's never been that option. Kuminga in his entire career, as brief as it's been, has never really been like that wingman, if you may say so, whereas Moody has. So when Kristen Peak said that added clarity for me in terms of why Moody's assimilating a lot more effectively than Kuminga, I think. I don't know. Sorry to...
Yeah, no, I mean, Moses Moody has handled the entire situation much better than Jonathan Kuminga in terms of playing, not playing, you know, having his role be up in the air. I don't think it was fair to him, but, you know, he handled it a lot more maturely than Jonathan Kuminga did. And I'm sure a lot of that does have to do with his background experience and you know, the roles that he had growing up playing basketball. I guess my next thought is, in terms of just like fitting the Warriors better, because this is someone who's going to be able to accept being a role player, position wise is where the next questions lie for me, because the Warriors needed Jonathan Kuminga's length, athleticism, some of the rim protection. Now, there aren't big differences in terms of the size between a Thompson or a JK, but positionally, from everything I've seen, both the Thompsons are clearly guards. Even if Ausar Thompson is more of a combo guard, an off-ball guard, he's still a guard. So then my next question is, you know, how does it help the Warriors with the size issue that they've been dealing with and the lack of depth in terms of their front court? So I guess that would be my next thing in terms of let's say you do get rid of Kuminga, you trade up and you pick up a Thompson, then what's plan B? What's the next step to building up the front court? Because to me, I saw Jonathan Kuminga as being a player who had potential to make major impact. And we saw, you know, spurts of it during the season. There were times, as we've talked about shortly before the postseason, that Jonathan Kuminga was playing big minutes and he was playing well and playing good defense and all these other things. Even if the attitude piece wasn't quite there, or, you know, whatever you want to say about the fit in terms of him expecting big minutes or commanding minutes. his play worked. And there was a good stretch of games where it did work and it was helpful to the Warriors. So, you're also bringing in a Thompson who's going to be another guard. And the Warriors were already so guard heavy this past season. We both complained about the forwards they let go, or at least the players who were able to stretch the floor from like a 4 position. Now what? I guess that would be my next question, is that they would need to make some moves, because I just feel like you're adding another guard. There already are so many. Size. The Warriors need size, in my personal opinion.
I agree.
You also got a plan now for taking down Nikola Jokic. Like, to me, the Denver Nuggets are the team to beat. And teams have to actually plan on building their rosters around that. And I don't think the Warriors have the tools right now. So, I think the Thompson, I get all those things in terms of the fit in the ability to accept his role on the team versus a Jonathan Kuminga. But at the same time, for me, basketball decision wise, I don't know that I'm super excited about adding another guard, even if he's great. I just feel like we need more depth in the front court. That should be more of an area of focus. I've seen some people bring up hey, why don't the Warriors trade up and go after a Jarris Walker? That makes more sense to me in terms of bringing in someone who's going to be a power forward, and also especially if they can pick up a forward who could spread the floor. But I don't know. So it's interesting. What's the long-term plan here if you're bringing in a Thompson? Who are you bringing in to help with the size?
The All-Star Thompson comparison that Sam Ferris gave yesterday was he could be an Andre Iguodala type. Someone who is defensive oriented, someone who technically is listed as a guard, but he has the physique to really be more of a 3, maybe under a Steve Kerr system of 4. But I think ultimately this All-Star Thompson thing is the Warriors just wanting to move on from a player who had the audacity to speak out publicly about wanting to play more. This whole thing is crazy. All this to me comes down to Steve Kerr and what he likes and what he wants. And the question is, I don't want to give up Kuminga. I love Kuminga. I think if you let him play, he will reward you. The adage I've been saying on the show for years now is good things happen when Kuminga plays. But Steve Kerr's the head coach. He doesn't agree with that. And, what else can we do? So it sucks. It sucks. And Oscar Thompson, reportedly, that's the role he would fit. He would be an Andre Iguodala type. Not a good shooter yet. That's the one negative that I've heard, but that wouldn't be what they'd be drafting him for. It'd be more so for perimeter defense, do all the little things from a hustle perspective, rebounding. That's where we're at. It sucks. Jama. Oh, and by the way, I'll get to the star chats at the end. I know we're running low on time, but the Jama Mahlalela news was fascinating. And I love your thoughts, Kylen, because he left. This kind of slipped on the radar. Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted this briefly that he was going back to Toronto, where he previously coached. He's been with the Warriors for 2 years. He was started off as a player development coach. Last year, he was the number 2 assistant, or number 1 assistant. I don't know how you phrase that verbally, but it was Kerr, Atkinson, Jama. That was the pecking order. So Jama Mahlalela was number 3 overall, the number 2 assistant. And he left. He left for a nearly identical assistant coaching position with the Raptors. The why of that remains a mystery, but for him to just leave like that in a lateral move, right? That always raises eyebrows. And then I tweeted this out yesterday that, I fortunately know a couple people in that building. The same insider who a year ago told me that Mike Brown leaving was going to be a disaster. Said the same thing about Jama Mahlalela, not to that same dramatic effect, but he did not see that as a good thing. He didn't see that as a promising sign. I agree. To me, the wrong assistant left. I would love to see Kenny Atkinson move on. His analytic influence, the fact that he was the defensive coordinator on a Warriors defense that was the worst defense we've seen in this dynasty outside of maybe 2020. I wouldn't mind it if Kenny Atkinson was the one who moved on. Unfortunately, it was Jama Mahlalela. Your thoughts, Kylen, on the Warriors now needing to find a new assistant coach?
It's concerning. It's head scratching, as you mentioned, when you do have an assistant leave for another almost identical or at least same level assistant coaching position. I'm just curious to see how it plays out this season, because I think this past season, Steve Kerr was exposed a little bit with Mike Brown leaving. To be honest, I think that it was very apparent how much Mike Brown influenced the Warriors' success based on what we saw this past season. A huge drop off in defense, which I know it's kind of ironic because Mike Brown went and turned the Sacramento Kings into the best offense in the NBA. But with the Warriors, he was the defensive coordinator by all means. And he was the one who shaped a lot of their defensive schemes and made the Warriors one of the top 3 to 5 defenses the last several seasons. And to see that huge drop off as soon as he left, like, to me, it was very apparent that Mike Brown was, took on a big role, and the Warriors didn't have the capability to fill those shoes. With, you mentioned Atkinson, whatever he did, it wasn't working. I know there's something to be said for the roster construction personnel, but at the same time, like, to me, there wasn't enough changeover to where the Warriors defense should have been as bad as it was this season. That's what I think. And the other proof of that is that the Warriors were good defensively at home and they were terrible on the road. So to me, that tells you have the talent, and that you have the players with the capability to play good defense. Like, why such a huge discrepancy? So the whole thing seems to, I don't know. Like I said, to me, it's a little bit telling that Steve Kerr does rely pretty heavily on his assistants based on the impact we saw of Mike Brown leaving. So I'm just curious to see, are we going to see something similar with Jama now leaving? Like, is there going to be a hole in the Warriors game that is suddenly going to come to the surface and come to light because it's an area that, Steve Kerr really relied on him in. So I don't know if you've heard anything in terms of like, are expecting any particular, area that he focused in to, someone's gonna have to fill those shoes, but I'll be curious to see, because we all knew it was pretty well known that associate head coach Mike Brown, because he was the associate head coach, was handling the defense. I don't know if Jama had like a certain niche, but it'll be interesting to see if there's an impact there.
Yeah, I agree. My understanding is Jama Mahlalela's responsibility this last year, and this was reported simply from a Scott Ostler column. That's the Warriors' assistants, and I think this is general practice for most NBA teams. Assistant coaches, their media appearances are controlled by the teams. They're not allowed to talk strategy.
Very limited in general.
Yeah, and Kenny Atkinson doesn't do interviews, period. So he's like a massive enigma. Like people have tried to sit him down, pick his brain a little bit, get to know him. He won't do it. Jama would, very friendly individual. I could tell you the players liked him a lot. He also had a work ethic very similar to Mike Brown. He was there early, left late. He was very focused on preparation. And even though he was in charge, based off what Scott Ostler wrote, supposedly, of rotations and so forth, though he wasn't in charge of like in-game rotations, like he was responsible partly for strategizing which lineups were maybe most effective, but Kerr has the final say on all that stuff. Who knows if they differed in that regard or not. But regardless, Ty Hall, he was there originally for player development, but not this last year. And before we go, real quick, we're running up against the clock. Wanted to read off a few of these chats. Jared Jack, former Golden State Warriors point guard, Gago writes that he coached Kuminga with the G League Ignite. Kuminga likes him, but I think Jared Jack was just hired by someone else, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to Google that real quick. So otherwise, yeah, I would actually be down for that. I would not be opposed. Jared Jack just announced that he is joining Monty Williams' staff in Detroit. So that is not an option. Ty Hall writes, the Thompson twins are from the Bay. You are correct. Studio 101 writes, Moses Moody was a star at Arkansas. You are correct, but he wasn't a star for a number of years in his developmental period with the AAU program. So from that experience, he learned to be a second wheel, if you follow what I'm saying there. And Ty Hall adds, yes, Moses Moody played with Kate Cunningham and Scotty Barnes in high school. And then Ty Hall asks about Naz Reid. But that's impossible. The Warriors cannot get him as a free agent. They can't do sign-in trades because of the cap. So there you go. Packed show today. Crazy. Kylen, have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, Cy. We'll see you all on Monday.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. And again, Rafael Barlow joins me tomorrow for a special Saturday show to talk about the draft. Thank you, everyone. Follow us on Twitter, the show at Locked On Dubs.